So, my daughter Ava and I have been talking about sharing a whole bunch of different series. And one of the first series we were talking about is one in regards to communication, because we are both really big fans of clear communication. But that does not mean we always get it right. And so
No.
we're going to kick off this series that we'll see how it comes out, maybe a 3 or 4 part series on communication in different kinds of relationships and approaching different types of subjects.
Yeah.
But we're just going to really candidly, we're not even sure exactly how this is going to go.
Yeah.
We really never do when we do a podcast. We just turn it on. But we're just going to share a kind of a behind the scenes conversation of what it got to look like when we had almost a year ago, it was last July, a hard conversation between the
Yeah.
two of us. So, all right, here we go. Okay, so Ava, we were in California in June of last year for a couple of weeks, and we were having a great time.
Mhm.
And I was there working while I kind of came to support
Yeah.
you because you were in part of an internship out there in
Yes.
California.
Yeah. For 2 weeks we were out there. Yeah.
Yes,
Pretty long time.
exactly. So we were living in a house together out there with someone who I work with, and also
Yes.
one of your siblings
Yeah.
was there as well.
My little brother.
Yeah. So we're having a grand old time. We weren't seeing each other that much because
Yeah,
you
we
were
really
working all
weren't.
day. I was
We
working
were
all
just
day.
doing dinners and stuff like that and just some beach day stuff, but on literally only like once, I think. So yeah, we were really doing our own things.
Right. And so we were about halfway into that time together at that
Yeah.
house. And we were out to dinner one night, and there was a moment where the water had run out.
Yeah.
And I had flagged down the waiter many times. They weren't coming. And then they said they would bring the water, and they didn't bring the water. And I was feeling very conscious of the fact that you and your sibling didn't have anything to drink and
Yeah.
were out.
Because she is very, you always have the best intentions, but that's sometimes where, and that's why it's important to have these kinds of conversations to know where you're coming from. But sometimes from an outside perspective, it can be like, for me, I mean, where we get to is me saying, Mom, like, it's not that big of a deal, it's okay, telling her to basically calm down. And that's kind of where this whole thing kind of started.
Right.
Yeah.
And I obviously don't react very well when
Yeah.
I feel like I'm trying to help a situation
Yeah.
and somebody, and then someone says, calm down. I think I'm severely allergic to those
Yeah, that's
words.
really bad.
It, it actually makes me
Yeah.
not calm down. It feels like, oh my gosh, this person doesn't even see that I'm actually trying to help.
Yeah.
So we had a miscommunication, and as many people her age do, she picked up her phone. And I knew she was venting either to her boyfriend or a friend. And I asked
I was
her,
just like, I'm just gonna sign out. Like, I can't deal with this.
I was like, last time I checked, I'm pretty sure I'm here supporting you for
Yeah.
your internship. Put your phone down. That's rude. And then it got
She
into
started to blow
this.
up
Yeah.
really bad.
It got into like we couldn't even hear each other. And so we were at the end anyways, asked for the check and called the Uber and got up and started to leave. And you remained at the table for a few more moments before you came out.
Yeah.
So you get into the Uber, we have some words, and I am not
Some
happy.
loud words.
Some loud words.
I literally had to apologize to the Uber driver.
I'm not happy with the attitude that is happening,
Yeah.
right? And so I'm not feeling seen.
Yeah.
And you're going to hear Ava's side in a moment. I'm not feeling seen. I'm certain you weren't feeling
Yeah.
seen. Completely missing each other, both carrying our own stresses and our own big stuff that was going on that day in
Yeah.
our professional lives, and then not being able to really hear what the other person needed.
Mhm.
So we go home, we arrive to our Airbnb, and I go in ahead and
Yeah.
I go right into my room and close my door and get ready
Right.
for bed, because I know myself well enough to know I was not in a place of being able to have a conversation. And I think sometimes we also fail to realize that even parents' feelings get really hurt.
Yeah, which is a big thing. I think especially mother to daughter, it's And I think I've realized this a lot more since having this since we had
Mm,
this conversation, and I kept on telling you that I've been able to see so much more of you and me, whether that's good or bad. I mean, sometimes it's like not the best qualities because we both have a short fuse or something like that, but it's just being able to see you as not just a mom, but like a human, and like knowing
yes.
that you've had similar experiences to as me, and it's not just you're just this just a mom. Like you have so
Right.
much more to you, and I think that's important too. Like that's something that I think I was able to see more once we had this conversation, and then all that going forward. So yeah.
Right. So then what had happened is I went to my room, she went to her room, and the next day, through the help of beloved
Diana.
Diana, who works for me and is a big, big part of our lives.
Yeah.
We love her, adore her so very much, and she's family to us. And Diana, who is just extraordinary at being able to kind of be a mediator, if you
Yes, yes,
will.
a mediator.
I
That's
don't
like
think she had
yeah.
expected that was the role she was gonna play, but
Yeah.
essentially
She's like, I don't want to come to California. Like,
she went upstairs and I went to bed and I didn't even know. I didn't even know that
yeah.
she'd gone upstairs to talk to Ava and Jax and really for them to have some space to kind of air what was going
Yeah.
on and offer the idea of a conversation for the next day. So I'm going to let Ava up until the end of
Yeah.
that night you explain your part and then we'll talk about the really transformational conversation we had in the backyard
Yeah.
the next day when we were both done working.
Well, I would say obviously, so Diana came up that same night, like a few minutes later, and I wasn't similar to you. I wasn't in the right space to even think of a solution in that moment. So
Mhm.
I was honestly kind of pushing that idea away when she was trying to. I mean, I'm so thankful that she did,
Mm.
but I think it's normal to not be able to fix everything right then and there. Like I'm happy that we didn't even try to do that because like
Yes.
we were both angry. Like we couldn't see that as a
Right.
possibility at that time. But she basically was talking about, I mean, she was sharing her own experience and how it's just important that like this is an important relationship, but she was validating me,
Yes.
and she was trying to defend you but also making sure to validate me because that's important.
Absolutely.
So, and I don't think I would have listened to her if she wasn't doing that because I needed her to see me.
Yes.
And she did. So that was important. And obviously I then needed you to see me, which we get to, but I think that was important and kind of whatever. I don't really know what conclusion we came to, but I was like, okay, I guess like we'll probably end up talking. But I still was not in the best place for that. But then we did end up I mean, we were still the next day we talked, but we were both like hurt, obviously. And it's
Mhm.
just this kind of like awkward tension and neither of us really know what to say. And we're still kind of on that
Yeah.
yeah, I don't even know like, what the word is, but we're still what is it? Like still in that like energy kind of at the
Yes.
beginning, and it took us a while to get out of it. Like once
Yes.
we started talking, we had a long conversation.
Yes, we
And
did.
it took us a very because I was going back and forth with you saying like you're still not getting it and no and it just feels and sometimes it feels really hard. It did feel
Yeah.
really hard. And then we could have given up, but thankfully we
Yes.
didn't. So
Oh,
I know you want to talk more about like the conversation itself. So
yeah, so you had to go the next morning. I don't
oh
I
yeah, I went right to my internship.
Yes, we got up basically I think we had a chance to say goodbye, have a good day. Well, can we talk when you get home?
Yeah.
So we both went about
I was
our
like, sure, bye.
separate yes, you did. We both went about our separate ways, did our work and reconvened when you got home.
That definitely helped too. Like I
Yeah.
think allowing yourself to like this is in any relationship and sometimes it's hard. Sometimes I do think you should talk about it right then and there. It kind of
Mhm.
depends. But I think sometimes it's okay to let yourself have some time to calm down and cool down because if you don't do that, it might just not get anywhere. So,
Absolutely. Sometimes that space, it just gives you perspective
yeah.
too and lets you take some deep breaths and come at it. Not sometimes when
Yeah.
I'm in such a fired up energy about something
We're in
or
like fight or flight mode. Like we're just ready to like we're
yes,
combative, like we're not in the right we weren't looking for solutions at that point. So
right, exactly.
we weren't open to them, I guess.
Right. And so when you came home later that day, I'd asked you, do you feel ready to go in the backyard and have a conversation?
Hmm.
And you said yes.
Hmm.
So we went back
I don't
there.
think I could have like went on with that much longer. It was just
It was so
Yeah, it's
painful.
just yeah, we had to at least try to talk about it.
So painful,
Yeah.
yes. So we went back there and we started having a conversation, and you had referenced that there had been things that I had done that had really made you feel unseen or
Yeah.
unheard in the more like 3-year recent
Yeah.
past that you'd been holding on to. And it took us a few minutes to get there to that,
Mhm.
right? And I had no idea that you had been, for lack of
Yeah.
a better word, holding on to or harboring those things so closely. And we're going to share that in a minute and what it was. But the point is, I could have never possibly known if you'd not been willing to share that with me. And
Yeah.
if you'd not been willing to get uncomfortable and lay this out and also do it in a way where we weren't yelling or screaming at each other
Yeah.
and then couldn't have hurt each other. We
Right.
waited a day, calmed down, and were able to really, really hear each other.
But and even the thing is, like, yes, we were able to hear each other, but it also wasn't, kind of like I said before, it wasn't that simple. Like, it did take us time, even in that conversation, for
Yes.
you to hear me and for me to hear you, because it's like we want to defend ourselves so bad, and we want to think that we didn't hurt each other, and we always have the best intentions, but that doesn't mean
Yes.
that it's always the best for the other person. And it's
Yes.
and things that I have done, I don't even realize that it's affecting you, and vice versa. But it wasn't like I tell you this and you're like, okay, like, I'm so sorry for that, let's move on. It's not that easy. But
No.
thankfully, with time and continuing the conversation, we were able to get there. But
Yeah.
I just don't want anyone to think, in any type of situation, in any relationship, that it's ever that easy,
No.
because it's not. and
No.
and since this conversation, we still argue. I mean, it's different. Like, we
Yeah.
still get annoyed with each other, but it is different. Like, we needed that to break through, like, a deeper thing, a deeper level of what was really going on, and why we were getting angry with each other all the time, and like getting pissy with each other for whatever reasons we didn't know, but deep down we did. And this
Right.
conversation allowed us to bring it up.
Yes.
Yeah.
So do you want to share the conversation? I
Mm,
mean, with as
yeah.
little detail or as
Right.
much detail as you feel comfortable.
Right. So, yeah, there was a few things for each of us that
Mhm.
we were holding on to, but I would say that one of them was, and you said it was around, most of the things were within a few years,
Yeah.
because that's just more relevant. I mean, there's obviously probably been things from years ago, but at this point it was too far gone. But so this was last year. So then a few years before that, I had lost my one of my best friends, and was really struggling with that and going through that. And then about a month after that had happened, we were having a family friend party thing going on, and I had just come from spending time with my ex-boyfriend, who was also friends with the person who died, and it was just a very close proximity
Yeah.
situation, and had some very just some really hard conversations, and just was not in a good place just from those conversations, but was already, so it just added on to the layers, because I was already in a terrible place because I was grieving. And then came home, and I think you guys were all like sitting out on the back porch or something. And
Mm.
I kind of think I like motioned to you, or like you could just tell that I was upset. So I kind of called you over, and we were talking in private. And I think I was just saying like how upset I was, and I think maybe I was like crying. And some of the people who were there were my age. Like, they're like sisters to me. They're like my really close friends, because they're the daughters of the parents who were there. And they were all upstairs. They had been there for like an hour or something. So obviously I'd been late to this, but given the circumstances, I figured like it was okay, because everybody there knew what I was going through. But you had basically, and again, it's like you have your own reasons for everything, but you were basically saying like, and got kind of like, and that was what was hard too, is for a second you were like, you're very nurturing, self understanding, and then it's kind of like this switch where you're like, all right, well, now I'm a host for a party, and like that kind of got
Yeah.
mixed up, or mixed up. So you basically were saying you something like, you need to be here for your friends who are alive. Like, you need to, like, they're gonna stop like hanging out with you if you can't be here, and stuff like that. And obviously, again, you had good intention,
Mm.
but it just, for me, it was a very wrong time for that, and
Yeah.
just totally wasn't what I needed. So that was really hard. And but
Yeah.
again, you didn't, clearly you didn't know. So
Right.
that's something, and I didn't say it to you, like, after that, I just kind of, like, dealt with it and moved on, but it was definitely one of a few things that I held against you because it's not really like you. I think that was what was
Mm.
hard too, is
Mm.
I didn't expect it from you, so it's just, I think, that much more upsetting
Yeah.
because you were always there for me through that entire, like, grieving process, but I think there was a few times like that where it was just kind of hard because I was kind of, like, shocked, I guess, because I wasn't expecting it, and I think it
Yes.
wasn't what I needed, obviously, but yeah.
Right.
But thankfully, we were able to talk about that.
Yes, and
Yeah,
I was able to fully hear that and receive that and see it from your perspective
yeah,
and how that was the last thing you needed to hear at
yeah,
that time, right? And really deeply sincerely offer my apology. And then that took a process, right? That alone was its own process. And then moments later I said to you, if you want at all to understand the perspective, like why I said what I said, I'll share that with you. But I also understand if you, and I'm not sharing my perspective to negate your experience or
yeah,
your feeling. And I think this is where we can start to help. And my husband and I, dad and I do this so much.
yeah,
It's like after the other person fully and genuinely can receive it and feel it and it be deeply apologetic
yeah,
for the way it was experienced by the other person, for the other person, if the other person's willing to
mhm,
hear it, to be able to say, if you're at all want to know the inner workings of what was
yeah,
happening for me, because again, this is how we build intimacy in
mhm.
relationships.
Because it doesn't have to be you using it as an excuse. It's just,
Never.
and I think it's sometimes it's important because, yeah, once you can understand me, because that at the root of it, that was the problem, right?
Right.
But then once you can apologize for it, then we can kind of backtrack and see, like, where you were coming from, because it doesn't have to be like you using as an excuse. It's
Yeah.
you explaining why and kind of validating your reason, even though you can acknowledge that it wasn't right. It's just showing where you were coming from at that time and why you did what you did.
Right.
Because it's obviously was never to hurt me. It's never to do anything bad. It's just so obviously, but it's important to kind of explain why
Yeah.
and ask the person if they want to hear it and allow them to do that.
Right. And
Yeah.
it's never like I'm sharing this as a negating of
Yeah.
your experience. Um, or minimizing how it felt for you.
Yeah.
And obviously, also with that comes all the ways in which I'm like, oh my gosh, if I could go back and do that so many days over, how
Right.
differently I would have done it.
Right.
I was so in my own concern for you because I felt that you were isolating.
Yeah.
You were very social before that. And the grief, obviously,
Yeah.
for some people, the response is more isolation and pulling away. And as a mom, I was feeling the fear and the terror
Yeah.
of you pulling away from the people who were there supporting you, who
Right.
loved you, and feared that in time maybe they would all drop out of your life
Right.
because you weren't able to be in any kind of proximity with them. And so I think at the root of it was a quite honestly, and I think at the root of a lot of parenting, whether in mistakes and not mistakes,
Yeah.
is there is a fear
Yeah.
that we may lose our children to severe depression. We may lose our children to drugs when if we catch them experimenting. We're often wrong or indifferent or in any way that we show up, more often than not responding from a place of fear
Mm.
because we see the potentiality of
Yeah.
our child and we're
Yeah.
afraid that we're losing them and they're losing themselves in the world.
I think fear, and also, I mean, it kind of goes hand in hand, but I guess just always wanting the best from that for them. And
Yeah.
sometimes what you think is the best isn't always the best, but it's coming from a place of thinking it's what's the best for them. And maybe looking more in the future and less in that exact moment.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
I think that definitely.
And it's so interesting. I think we came to, and we were both bawling our
Oh yeah,
eyes
of
out.
course.
We were crying so much and hugging and
Yeah.
crying. But it didn't start that way. It started like in this,
Yeah.
like kind of guarded, where do we go from here? Is it even possible?
Yeah.
Like, because the night before had been so intense and so
Yeah.
heated. So I think the beautiful thing because of that is we also decided that we were going to kind of have like a code conversation or word that if we ever started
Yeah.
to feel like we both decided if we ever start to feel like there's water going under the bridge that's not being talked about, or we're feeling disconnected from each other in a way that's not just like an annoyance,
Yeah.
like
Or
how you take all my clothes out of my closet and I can't find them until I see her come home from college with them on.
she's
Okay.
like, oh, there's my tank top. I'm like, Mom.
I literally,
Stop.
she wears things that I thought I lost 2 years
Okay,
ago.
but that's true. But sometimes you gave
Oh,
it to me, and then you forget you gave it to me, and I'm like, why are we doing this again?
okay, no, because now it's a family joke every time. Like,
Yeah,
oh, I love that outfit, Ava.
I'm like, oh my god.
But aside from those little fun, playful things,
Yeah.
if we really start to feel like the percolation of
Yeah.
discomfort, or I'm feeling annoyed more than normal,
Like a deeper level.
we promised each other that we would come
Yeah.
and say, like, I'm feeling further away from you.
Yeah, and go back to that moment and say, like, let's go back to like that,
Yes.
and remember where we were in that conversation, and like how badly we want it to work, and how badly where we were at, but like neither of us want to be there.
No.
So, and we both at the end
So
of the day,
painful.
like, we have the same wants,
We do.
So
We have the same intention for the
yeah.
relationship. I mean,
Yeah,
it's
because
so good.
we figured that out. It's like, what do we both want? We obviously both want this to be good. We both want it to
Yes.
work. So even though we're very similar, but also very different. So
Yeah.
it's like, but at the root of that, we both want it to work. So we
Yes.
just have to, like, that has to be the home base. We have to always remember. And I think now we can use that conversation as the home base too.
100%.
And also kind of as an example, I guess.
Yes.
Of, like, that it is possible.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That we can figure out anything
Yeah.
together if we're both just, again,
Yeah.
curious and willing, like we've
That's
talked about.
the main thing, and what we'll always come back to
Yeah.
is, and in any relationship, you have to be curious and you have to be willing, because I could have tried to tell you those things, but if you weren't willing,
Yeah.
you wouldn't have heard, and vice versa in any relationship.
Yes,
'Cause,
100%.
And also, sorry not to cut
no.
you off, something that Dad always says is to have humility, which I think sometimes I really do struggle with, but I think that's a really big one.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you have to be able to admit that you've done something wrong. You have to be able to apologize. And that's hard,
Yeah.
because again, with the intentions, like, you always think you're doing the best, and you don't want the person to see you that way, and you don't want to admit that you were that way. But that's a really big thing too.
Yes.
Because I could tell you these things, and you have to be willing, but you also have to be able to accept it.
Yes.
And acknowledge it. So I think that's
to own where I went wrong, and
Yeah.
to be
And same with me.
apologetic
Yeah.
about it. Yes,
Yeah.
of course. Of course. And so as we kind of round this out, what would you say has been your biggest takeaway? Because you referred to a conversation in regards to, you kind of feel like after that conversation, you in the backyard in California last year, that you humanized me. I heard you say,
Yeah.
like, seeing me as, oh my gosh, she's more, because I shared some things about my childhood more than you had known prior. And I
Yeah.
think for you, it was like, oh yeah, that's right. And I remember saying, I know at times, because I did this as a kid too,
Yeah.
I know at times in a teenager, you look at your mom or your dad and think, how could they have got this wrong? Or how are they making a mistake? Or how are they not meeting this need for me? Not recognizing or realizing that as a mom, I'm also a wife. I'm also a daughter. I'm also a sister. I'm a business
Yeah.
owner. I'm a best friend.
And it's also, this is your first time being a mom.
Yes.
Like, that, when I heard that, I was like, I don't even remember where I heard that, but that's another thing too, because how the hell are you supposed to know? Like,
there is no, you don't. For anyone
Yeah.
listening, we don't know.
Yeah.
Here, the jig is up. None of
Yeah.
us know what we're
Yeah.
doing. We are literally bracing on for dear life and doing what we think feels like the right thing.
Yeah.
But often we are making a ton of mistakes, and we just keep hoping that our kids will see deep down the heart of who we
Yeah.
are, and that we really have that best intention.
Yeah.
But I'm certain, and I said to you that day, and will say to the end of time, to all of you, that I know I've made way more mistakes than I've ever wished I would have made, and wish I could go back and write them. But I also was learning, like, it's on the job learning, on the job training, with not as much forgiveness if I push the wrong button on a computer, as opposed to push a wrong button in a human heart that could have long-term repercussions.
Right.
So that's why these conversations are so helpful.
Yeah.
But I this past birthday of mine, we should have like had that letter. But this past birthday of mine, I think, was one of we have this tradition in our family,
Yeah.
which we'll talk about maybe in a different podcast, and
Yeah.
why it's so helpful and
Well, that's a
beautiful.
good thing for communication too, because that's a way to tell people things that you wouldn't normally tell them.
Yes. Do you want to tell them what we're referring to?
The one that I wrote for you?
No, just like our tradition.
Oh, yeah. So, yeah, basically, you started this years ago, like before Jax could, my younger brother.
Probably 18, 19 years ago, I started
Yeah,
this.
yeah, or maybe a little more recent than that because I was old enough to be writing them. And Jax.
Well, they were usually on like construction paper and more like a
Oh, okay,
picture.
right. They
Yeah.
have developed so much. Oh yeah,
They have.
they've developed a lot. I'm always just thinking about them like when I was fully writing letters. But yeah, you're right. I mean, they really have been around like our whole life. But yeah, it's basically where if it's any of our birthdays, so let's say it's your birthday, mom's birthday, we will each within the few days like leading up to it or before. I mean, the one I wrote for you this year was way before, but you would just write, and it's not just like because what I feel that a card with your name signed on it, it's still thoughtful, but it's just you're not getting to the deeper.
It feels more
Yeah,
impersonal.
yeah,
It's
and
less
and it's like we're
personalized.
family and we have so much to say, and I think sometimes you don't even realize how much you have to say until you start writing it.
She's
But
talking about writing letters.
yeah, so basically, yeah, sorry. We basically will all write letters. So if it's your birthday, all the siblings and dad will all write you a letter, and then we'll sit around at the table on your birthday, and we'll all read the letters we wrote to you out loud.
Mm.
And then obviously like we'll all like cry and hug, and but it's just a really good way because it's a way to say, I mean, because whenever I see you, it's I love you and whatever, but it's a way to actually get deeper
Mm.
into things and tell stories and just talk about less surface level things and find other ways to say that I love you. And especially because it's your birthday and like it's just such a great gift to hear from the people
Oh.
you love how much they love you. So I love that tradition.
It's my favorite
Yeah.
tradition, and we do this for everybody's birthday,
Yeah.
all the kids as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah, not
And
just her.
yeah, this is not just for me. I
Yeah, no.
started this tradition,
No,
but we
yeah.
all do it.
Yeah.
And I even think for like your brothers, like it's really helped as far as like
Yeah.
how do you raise, which is a whole nother episode, but how do you raise emotionally mature men?
Yeah.
You teach them from the time they're 4, 5, and
To
6.
share their feelings and not just like have the feelings but tell people and
Yes.
not be embarrassed and like realize how amazing that can be to have that
Mm.
emotional capability. I think it's great. And I mean, now I do it with my boyfriend. I mean, we do it on each other's birthdays and our
Mm.
anniversaries, and you do it. I mean, obviously you do it with Zach because he's part of our family, but everyone has started to do it more. Some of my friends do it, and I think it's just, and some of your friends do it with their families now. I think it's a great, great thing to do, and it doesn't have to start. I mean, it from where it is now versus where it started. Like we write so much more now, such
Yeah.
deeper letters, and it's just every year I think it gets more special.
It's just,
Yeah.
it's the biggest piece of advice I give to people as far as building relationships.
Yeah.
It's the greatest gift. And then you end up with like this, hopefully, box of
Yeah.
letters over the years from everyone in your immediate circle. So,
Yeah.
but this past year, when you were reading my card, I think it was, I heard in the letter that you wrote to me, I heard that that was such a pivotal moment for
Yeah.
you and me. And then you were thinking about something one day after school in the shower at
Yeah.
college, and how it all just kind of trailed together and brought us to this place where we are now.
Yeah.
And I think feeling the closest I've ever felt to you. I'd always felt close to you, but I think I feel now in a way that is like it's two women
Yeah.
kind of
Yeah.
relating and understanding how much goes into being a woman.
Right. Right. And I think, yeah, I think I did talk about that in the letter. And I think since that argument and that conversation, I've felt it a lot more. And just I think recognize it or been open to seeing those kinds of things. Again, as I've become older too, seeing myself or seeing you in me
Yeah.
and the things that I do, like, oh my God, like that's something that I used to get annoyed at her at. But like now
Remember at
that's
the
me.
restaurant the other night when you reached
Yes,
over and you're like,
yes, yeah, because I always well, my dad was telling my brother something at dinner, and my mom knew the story, like they both knew, and my dad's trying to tell it, and my mom just keeps on like saying stuff and jumping in and finishing his sentence, and I just said to her, I'm like, I love you, and then she was laughing, she's like, what, and I had to tell her, I'm like, that I do that all the time, and it's kind of like it's special to be able to see those kinds of things. It's like you don't even it's just who I am because I'm a part of you.
Mm.
So
And what I love so much is what you shared is you said, and everybody started laughing.
yeah.
But what I love what you said is where before maybe you would have gotten annoyed by that.
Yeah.
Now you not only see it also in yourself, but you recognize it's just like the excitement of the
Yeah,
story
yeah.
being told.
Yeah, because you wanna share it because you know it and you want him to know. So and that's what it is. I mean, yeah, that's I mean, that's not necessarily a bad thing. I think it's like funny and it's cute and but I guess like some of the things like it's the good things in you that I see in myself, which is amazing.
Mhm.
And then the things that I would get annoyed at, like just you having a shorter temper, and so do I, because we just and now that I have more things to worry about and I know more about the world and I have more anxiety about things and stress, it makes so much more sense why I'd be like, why the hell is she flipping out after 2 seconds of something not working? And not that that's always the best thing, but
Right.
sometimes it does happen because you have so much going on
Yeah.
and you're so stressed and you're like, oh my God, can this just work? Or oh my God, can you just do this thing?
Yeah.
And now I see myself doing that sometimes. And in a way, I'm like, oh my God, but sometimes it's like, oh, it's like that's like my mom. So
Yes.
it's like cute, but it's also like, oh my God, now we both have issues.
It's so true.
Yeah.
You end up morphing into this woman you said you never would
Yeah.
become. It's
No, literally, I'm like, oh my God, I'm never gonna be like that. And now I literally am because it makes sense. It's impossible not to be at times. Like when you're in the real world, and I mean, you have
yes.
so many. You do now, and but even then, especially like when we were younger, and it would happen, like you had so much going on.
So many moving
So
parts and
and then I
pieces.
couldn't even understand that.
No.
And again, at that point, I'm seeing you as my mom. I'm
Right.
not seeing you as a woman, as just a human being who doesn't just have to be there for me, who
Right.
was there before me and everything, like has her own life. Even
Yes.
though it probably didn't seem like that because we were literally always with you 24/7.
Yes.
Like,
And it's cumulative, right? Like
yeah,
when somebody's having a reaction in one moment, it's probably 17 other things are on their
yeah,
shoulder before that thing happens. And the one that I know I know now we laugh about, but I mean there's many, but I know that and I've come a long way with that. But
yeah. You have.
the one I really think about is when we were in Martha's Vineyard
Oh my
and with the
God.
lamp.
Oh yeah, that one's hilarious now,
But in the moment you were probably like,
we were like,
wow.
she's insane.
Yeah. Do you want to tell the story? Do you want me to tell it? This is an example.
Yeah, okay. So this was years ago, but
At least probably 10 years ago? Oh my gosh, it's gotta be
yeah,
10 years
yeah,
ago.
yeah, about yeah, so we get to this house in Martha's Vineyard. We were having it was so many of us. It was all of us kids, but then also another
Other kids we were hosting
yeah,
for the
for
summer.
the summer. So it was just a whole bunch of people. And I'm sure there was stress before we even got to the
Oh,
house. But
there
of course I
certainly
didn't know
was.
that. But when we get to the house and obviously like this has been a plan for a while and you and dad want the best. I mean, you put your money and time into this. And we get to the house and the house is nice, but there's ants everywhere and
Mhm.
it's just so much is going on. Some things I can't even say about some of the
Yes.
so just some crazy stuff was going which is all so funny now, but was not then.
Not then.
Yeah. So I can't. So me and one of my brothers were sharing a bedroom, and of course, among the million other things, I guess our lamp wasn't
No, the
working.
drawer was
Oh, the
stuck.
drawer was
And
stuck
I told them to go and
to
start
unpack.
unpacking their
Right,
suitcases.
right,
And they're like,
right.
Mom, the drawer's stuck. Can
Yeah.
you come down and open the drawer?
Yeah.
And I'm
I
like, oh,
should.
just another. In my mind, I'm thinking
Yeah.
another of the 30,000 things
Yeah.
going wrong at this freaking rental house.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to open the drawer and it's
We're
stuck.
sitting there. We're sitting there on the beds. She's actually going insane trying to open this drawer, and it's stuck. It's stuck. And there's a big lamp. I can't. I'm like picturing it. Me and my brother are just looking at each other like, oh my God. And then she's going crazy. We're like, Mom, like, it's okay. She didn't listen to us. She's still trying to, I can't get the drawer. Oh my God, like freaking out. And then I'm like, oh God. And me and Hayden see at the same time the lamp on the top of the drawer is like shaking. And we're like, Mom, the lamp.
I can't
We're like,
right
Mom,
now.
the lamp. And of course, she's like, oh my, like not listening to
And
us anything.
I think
don't
I was
even
like,
know.
be quiet, you
Yeah,
guys. I'm trying to do this.
Like, and then of course the lamp falls on her. The lamp comes falling down on her head, And right after that, of course, we're like, "Oh my god, mom, are you okay?" She's like, "Don't talk to me!" Like she runs out of the room, we're like holding her head, runs upstairs, which is another thing that's so funny too. Sometimes, like if I get hurt, my boyfriend, his name's Chris, because I'm gonna mention him so many other times, but like I've had to tell him because sometimes, especially if like he accidentally hurts me, obviously like he's gonna say sorry, it's not his fault. But sometimes if I'm in pain, I'm just like, just for a second, like
I'm
let
the
me breathe.
same.
He'll be like, sorry, 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 sorry.
I
I
know.
we actually I told him, I'm like, Chris, like I love you so much and I know that you're sorry, but you don't have to say sorry 8,000 times because it doesn't take the pain away. I was like, just say sorry and just let me be in pain for a second. like I was
It's like causes more
I was like, it's actually more
anxiety.
anxiety for you to be like, sorry, 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 like because I know you're sorry, but like, but it does make that's another thing too.
Or how about when the lamp falls on your head and somebody's like, "Are you okay?" And I'm like,
Obviously
"Do
not.
you think I can talk right now? I mean, why are you asking me questions?"
Yeah, that was another thing that like we used to deal with all the time. Like if you'd
Mm.
get hurt, like, "Are you okay?" And then you'd get mad at us for talking to you. I'm like, so what do I do if I don't say, "Are you okay?" Is she gonna be more mad? But if I do, she's gonna get annoyed. I'm like, how do I win?
So now the hilarious thing is if I do get hurt and we're like on a family vacation or something, everybody just kind of looks at each other and
Just
they're like, everyone's just like dead
yeah.
silent until I'm like, okay, I'm all right.
Like I don't even know when. I think you like oh, when you hit your finger in the door or something.
Oh yeah.
Or maybe that was just you and dad, but I remember like that, and dad was like, yeah, that was scary. Yeah. But
But we
anyway,
share all that to
yeah.
say the humanizing of your parent
Yeah.
can end up being such a beautiful thing. And then when you start to see qualities and traits of
Yeah. And see
your
why they
parent,
respond that way. Because
yes.
again, like when I was younger, I didn't like I didn't have the issues and the stress that I do now. So I couldn't it was that, so I couldn't relate, but I also didn't know half the story of what you were dealing with.
Right.
So it's like now that I'm older,
Nor
I
should you have
yeah,
because you were a
yeah,
child.
and that's important too. That's something you also said in the conversation we had in June. I think something like that of there was so much more going on, Ava, but I didn't tell you because you were a kid
Right.
and I shouldn't have to tell you. But I think it's the combination of now knowing so I mean, there's still things I don't know and there's still things you don't know about me, but
Yep.
which is good because we should have our own things in our own
Of
lives.
course.
But now that I know maybe 85% of why you might be pissed off and I can have my own experience to relate, that just makes all the difference.
Mm.
And I think there's that was is kind of the rough patch why I think so many teenagers and
Yeah.
moms have trouble because it's either you're a young kid and it's different or you're older and it's different. But then when you're going through that stage where I'm like actually getting aware of the world and then
Mm.
I'm also dealing with my own things but still not really knowing you and we're just more combative, like that's the hard stage, I
Yes,
think. And I
it
think
is.
we were kind of in denial with how hard that was and ignored some of the things and it just built up instead of having that conversation we had in June earlier. Which
Yes.
I think is why this podcast and these kind of conversations are important for people to hear because I'm happy we did have the conversation, but maybe we could have had it way earlier.
Absolutely.
And I think it's important to try and get to that sooner.
Absolutely. And as we kind of close this out, another conversation I really want to come back and have, whether we do it together or I do a
Yeah.
solo episode on it, is around this motherhood wound, which often evolves then into sisterhood wounds. Because the very first experience you're having of being a woman
Yeah.
and with a woman,
Is
the
your mom.
first main woman in your life is your mom. And so I really am so thankful that we've been able to have the hard conversations and keep growing together because you often all women, myself included, often have that as our first example in the
Yeah.
world of what relationships with women get to look like. Do we have a hard patch and then we just shut down, build walls and go separate ways? Can I trust that you can hold my feelings? Can we have like repair
Yeah.
after a rupture? So much is being informed about you being a woman in the world and how you relate to other women in the world
Yeah.
as it relates to our relationship. This is why mother-daughter relationships are so worth the
Yeah.
effort and the work, not just for that relationship, but every relationship the daughter will go on to have in her
Yeah,
life
and
with other
just for
women.
so many things, and like this is even different, but about how you view yourself and you talk about yourself, how that would affect me growing up, and
Oh, let's
how
have a whole conversation about
yeah,
that
because
another
that
day.
really is everything. And but the thing is, it's not just the mom; it's the dad too. The way that the parents are in a relationship together,
Yeah.
how they communicate together, how they treat each other, how you treat yourself, how he treats himself, how everything is important, and like it's really crucial for everything. How I grow up and who I become
Mm,
is a really. I mean, it's other things, of course, but it's a really big. It's a you too are a really big part of it. And I think especially you, because
mm.
and the way that my brothers probably feel that more with dad
Yeah.
in a way that they can't feel with you is the way that I feel with you that I can't feel with him.
Right.
I still need things from him
Of
and they
course.
still need things from you, but it's different because I'm a woman, you're a
You're
woman.
watching me be a
Yeah.
woman in the
Yeah.
world and go
And I
through
think
different
that's
phases.
that's yeah, I mean, we keep doing this, but that's a whole nother conversation.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for listening.
This is remember
And
when this was gonna be 15 minutes?
yeah, this was going to be our
Oh,
15-minute
and it's
episode.
40.
Oh, hi. Okay.
Oh.
Well, there you go. This
Thanks,
is
guys.
this is how
Thanks,
we do
thanks,
it.
girls. Thanks.